All right, and hey, welcome back, guys, to the Gulf Coast Growth Show. We are on a virtual edition, and I'm having camera issues, so I'm going in and out. I'm like a ghost, the ghost of Jason Lee today, and I'm here with Nick Morgan from Adaptive Construction Solutions. Nick, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
My co-host Clint not able to join us today. We're actually going to be back in studio in a couple of weeks to shoot some live episodes. So the next couple of weeks, I'll probably do a few virtual ones that you guys will be seeing, as regardless of whether you tune in on YouTube or perhaps if you're just listening on Spotify or one of our other channels. So want to thank you for being a part of this. And now, as those of you who know, the Economic Alliance Houston Port Region serves as a third-party advocate for our port region, really in driving everything that really fuels and drives the Gulf Coast economy. And a big part of that is workforce. And so today's topic is really going to be centered around workforce development. And so we've had tons of great workforce leaders here on our show in the past. I had the pleasure of hearing Nick speak at the Association of Builders Contractors here in Houston on Friday and share a little bit of his story. As a matter of fact, there were some testimonies before the show, and the kind of make you get a little choked up when you see some of the work of getting our veterans that have essentially been displaced and back into the workforce. So it's really cool to see what you're doing. Love to hear about it, and we're excited to have you on the show today, Nick.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
So let's start with this. First question I have for you is essentially why, right? Like, I mean, I looked at your profile. We had a discussion when I met you on Friday. Yeah, you're running a 14-year-old successful insurance company, Patriot. It's Patriot. What's the name of it?
Patriot Insurance.
Patriot Insurance, right? And so running that organization, you didn't have to, right? You probably could have just set off into the sunset with a successful insurance agency, but you've decided to go charge hard on this mission of yours with adaptive construction solutions. And so give us the why first.
Well, I have 7 kids. Why not be in the apprenticeship space when you have 7 kids? No, the truth is, I started ACS long before my wife and I decided to have 7. We always planned to have 4, and then we had 3 major flooding events in Houston. So one could imagine with COVID, I was still going to the office.
Yeah, there you go.
ACS, its roots, it's definitely, it's a partnership. Got a great partner, Carlos Polito, who's a Marine, and he does a lot of the heavy lifting. But for me, what really made me decide that this is something I wanted to do, take time away from my family, definitely had an impact on my agency. Its roots really go back 16 years. I left the military in 2006 after being wounded in Iraq. And when I transitioned with a set of skills. I had already been in the insurance industry before the military. So it was easy for me, relatively easy to get back into it. And the direction that I took was to start an agency versus going and working for another agent. Fortunately, I had saved enough money. I had what we call a war chest when I left the military. So it made that transition, relatively easier compared to many others. But as I continued to grow the insurance agency, which had, some fantastic experiences, and I absolutely loved the work, I always felt like there was something missing. And that's one thing that a lot of veterans struggle with, is having a sense of purpose in the job in which they do after the military. And so I wanted to impact veterans and others that needed a career pathway. But at the same time, I recognized that the industry that I focus on, which is structural steel erection and fabrication, had some serious issues with workers' comp. I looked at roughly 10 years of workers' comp injuries, and we had $21 million in claims. It was 1,100 workers' comp incidents.
Oh, wow.
And we connected that 84% of the claim dollars being spent were on employees that had been with that company for less than 100 days. So, there was a training issue. And so I went to all these steel erection companies. I said, look, you got to invest in training. They kind of kicked the ball back to me and said, well, why don't you do it for all of us? And they kind of asked me to put my money where my mouth was. So that was That was the start of ACS. So to have an opportunity to help veterans and others and help my customers was what started ACS. And I met Carlos a couple of years prior, and he left a global 2000 company to come to ACS and help me get it off the ground.
Fantastic. So, well, congratulations on leading the charge to get that done. Let's talk about the issue of veterans getting back into the workforce. I think a lot of people don't understand the dynamic, and since I can't capture the video in this, quick podcast that we're shooting, can you just give us kind of a high level overview of the obstacles or the challenges that are faced that you're solving? So, a veteran, they sign up, they go serve our country, they head overseas, they do their job, they do the best that they can, and they come out and they're struggling to find work. I mean, it just sounds painful to think about, but tell us the real story about the challenges they face.
Right. It's a very complex challenge and problem. And look, it's taken me years, even in the space, to really figure out where are the gaps. And so, I mean, imagine you're 17, 18, 19 years old. I was almost 22 when I joined. And you join the military and you grow. There's no doubt you learn how to be on time. You know how to be part of a team. You know how to bring up others within your team. However, there are some things that you don't learn to do. Like, you might be getting your first apartment and you don't realize you got to call a utilities company and an electric company to get your power on, right? And so sometimes there's some gaps that they may not realize that they have to figure out. And when they relocate, when they transition out, they often think it's going to be a lot easier than what they than reality. And a lot of that is unfortunate, and it's a kind of a byproduct of a lot of good intentions. We have these transition programs, and all these companies may get involved, but do they really have a lot of roles for a lot of the folks that are getting out, or is it more for their senior NCOs, or officers, right? And so they leave with this mindset that everyone wants to hire me, but business owners have some concerns that are legitimate. For instance, hey, if I hire this veteran at $15 or $16 an hour and I provide a career pathway and start to train them, that's commiserate of their skill level at that moment for what they're bringing to the table after 2 or 3 years in the infantry, perhaps, right? But am I going to be able to keep them? And that's where the employer gets concerned is, hey, it's commiserate of the skill level because they've never done this role or that role. How am I going to retain them? That's just a real challenge, right? And so as that service member moves to Houston or anywhere else, they're confronted with some difficulties of translating their skills, understanding what employers' really needs are, and also realizing as we say, an E4, as a specialist or corporal, you're not going to make O3 pay, which is a captain, right?
Gotcha.
And so all of this reckoning occurs in the first 6 months. And I haven't met a veteran yet out of the 800 that we've put into jobs, out of the thousands that have came through here, that thought that it was easier than they imagined, right? It was a much more difficult process than they ever thought. And that's part of that, the issue that we have and that we're trying to address is all of our approaches from a public policy position has been focused on delivering services and resources before they get out and not delivering services when they're downstream. When they move to wherever community that they're going to, that's where they really need resources because they all think they have it figured out before they got out. Their cousin has a job, their uncle's got a job for them, their friend's got a job for them. They show up, it doesn't work out like they thought it was going to, and now they're left unemployed.
So, well, thank you for giving us kind of a peek into what that experience is like. I guess the next question that I have for you is: you guys have so you've established a foundation. You're working on it these days. I know you've collaborated with CMEF, right? And they work with ABC on workforce development and trade and craft education. So, can you walk us through the relationship that you guys have and how it's making an impact in the industry?
So many of our employers that partner with ACS, such as like Bechtel or McCarthy Building Companies and others, all the way down to small operations, local construction companies that may have only 20 or 30 employees. A lot of those firms are members of ABC and have been partners with CMEF. And so it was a logical partner for us because we want partners that everybody respects at the table, right? So if training is not being delivered at a certain quality, we have to be careful who we associate with because we want to meet the needs of employers, right? And so for us early on, working with CMEF uh, made a lot of sense. And as a longtime ABC member, it made a lot of sense because they had the reputation. And so they've helped us with delivering training and for some of our apprentices, whether they're veterans or young adults. And we try to sponsor them and support them however we can along the way.
Fantastic. Yeah, I think both of those, CMEF and ABC, have had a big impact in the industry, working directly with the contractors. ABC being a collaborative partner with Economic Alliance. That I think everybody's rowing in the same channel, which is let's keep jobs flowing, let's keep projects creating capital and dollars here in our great city and local regions. So I think we're excited to have that, and it's great that you're playing a role in that. Are you familiar? I know. There's been some potential legislative looks or things that people have been working behind the scenes to help the veteran community, especially getting actively involved in the workforce. Now I know that's not necessarily in your wheelhouse, but I think it might be relevant to the stuff that you're working on. Are you familiar with any of that was happening or going on behind the scenes? And could you enlighten us a little bit?
No, absolutely. We watch it at the state and federal level, but honestly, what we try to do is demonstrate or identify what works and doesn't work.
Gotcha.
Like, for example, recently we built a SQL database where we were able to pull in all the performance data for the entire workforce system, which represents about 37 or 3.7 million people a year that receive some sort of training or employment placement services through all these different government programs. They report to one system. And it was to dig down into the data. It showed us, just how successful we've been, especially because of our employer partners and their commitment. And, you look at some of these programs and what is the effectiveness? What are the outcomes? But we also look at, the continuing conversation of expanding apprenticeship. One thing that I think is really important is aligning existing programs behind this expansion effort, right? Whether it's a registered apprenticeship or informal apprenticeship, whatever it may be, is there's resources there to support apprenticeship. And instead of just always looking at creating new resources, hey, can we pull some of these together that have specifically been successful? And that's one of the things as a workforce intermediary that we do with employers is we're there to help that employer facilitate access to workforce funding. So, for example, with a registered apprenticeship, and for an individual who has certain barriers to employment, for example, somebody who left the military in the last several years, when an employer hires that individual for a registered apprenticeship, because that is a full-time job first, um, they receive a reimbursement of part of the wage from the workforce system.
Hmm.
And so while those dollars don't come from us directly, we help facilitate it. And that's 75% of the wage of that apprentice for the first 640 hours. So that can be anywhere from $7,000 to $10,000 in direct reimbursements on an apprentice wage. So that
My
removes a
gosh.
lot of the risk of hiring somebody that maybe they didn't have all the skills that you thought, but they have all the characteristics you want. They're a good human, they're a good team player, right? But hey, you don't know how to do this. Well, now my risk is removed because I can show you how to do it on the job like we've always done. But if you leave, well, most of that wage has been reimbursed.
Wow, that's fantastic. So I think a lot of times contractors, business owners, operators, there's so many different irons in the fire, right? There's so many different things happening, and a lot of times I use the term you got to slow down to go fast. Sometimes you got to slow down, investigate, ask questions, and seek to understand, and then leverage outsource people such as yourself, CMEF, all these other government, organizations. I'm always encouraging contractors and owners and manufacturers. I'm always saying join these organizations, not because not to just throw a banner up and say you're a member and hope to get business. I mean, I think that sometimes there's this misinterpretation. You join an ABC, you join an economic alliance, and you're doing it so you can network and create a lot of opportunity. When the truth is, you might be right under your nose missing out on these tax credits or these credits that are available for hiring, training, developing. When you think about what that looks like for onboarding an employee, thousands and thousands of dollars are lost in organizations every day across our state when someone's turned over because it just wasn't done correctly, right? And so I know that I used to run organizations, and I know that what you're sharing is it's a bleed, and sometimes we're so busy chasing dollars we're burning them up and right in front of us because we're not managing and facilitating these things. But why not be part of these organizations, get actively involved, understand what a NIC does and what a CMEF does and what their organizations are doing, and then offload it to that. So as we get ready to wrap up, I want to ask you, if I'm listening to this, you mentioned McCarthy Builders, Bechtel, a few others, but give us an idea who's your end user. So if I'm listening, if I'm tuned in right now and I'm like, I'm the guy that needs adaptive construction solutions. I'm that guy. Who is that guy?
Well, to address one point is these dollars, when we think about it, because these are taxpayer dollars.
Right.
It's not just leaving money off the table or on the table. How we really need to see it is these dollars are really critical to creating opportunities for people who are willing to work, who are
Right.
resilient, that aren't going to be scared away from the type of work that construction has to offer. But at the same time, the Department of Labor recognizes if you're going to give this person a shot, yeah, you have to give them a little bit more supervision as they're learning on the job, right? And so that's what these dollars are there to offset. And it's very effective in the sense that also it provides a little bit of patience sometimes. As you hire somebody, if they're not producing at a certain level at a certain time frame, often it's like, look, the economics of the job, I just can't keep you. But here, when you're receiving these reimbursements, it's not a tax credit; it's an actual check that you receive. It then creates a little bit of patience in the sense, hey, let's do this the right way. Let's make sure that we're training them up. Let's put some structure behind their experience within our organization for these first few months to make sure that they're gaining experience, that they have the training to be successful. So we keep them, and that's how you're going to end up indoctrinating them into your company culture, right? Is because now they realize that you've been patient, you gave them the attention that they need so that they're successful. And that has a lot to do with even veterans finding purpose after the military. It's not that they can't find purpose even pushing a broom, they can. They just want to make sure they do it well, and they want to make sure it contributes to the overall mission. They can push a broom or anything else, but if they feel like it doesn't bring value, right, and that they're not confident in what they're doing, it becomes very uncomfortable very quickly for them. So
But
a
these
little bit
guys
about
have dedicated their whole lives to being part of a mission and part of a team and part of a purpose. And then, you plug them in and you stick them over in a warehouse somewhere and never talk to them, hope that they get the job done and don't involve them or breathe life into them is what you're trying to solve for and where they're trying to go. That you're correct. That can
right.
be
It's like one of our partners, Fast Track Specialty, John Glaze, when he hired some of the apprentices, he took the time to spend 2 hours with them, tell them about his company origin, the story, walked them around, introduced them to people, right? And of course, everyone they've hired so far, they've kept. So that explains it. When they know why am I here every day, and we serve a purpose. It could be any kind of business, but it serves a purpose in our overall economy and the way that we live our lives, the public. I think that brings value, and sometimes somebody just needs to explain it to them. But a little bit about ACS. So ACS, we're a sponsor of a Department of Labor group non-joint registered apprenticeship. So that's a lot, right? So what does that mean? Well, when we say a group non-joint, that means we're a merit shop program. The unions have done apprenticeship really well. We do it a little bit differently. We duplicate some of the things that they've done, but we work for the merit shop industry solely, right? But we're all for the same mission, which is developing a skilled workforce. So we also have always taken the philosophy that an employer-centric model was critical for everybody, for taxpayers who support our programs through contracts that we have with the Department of Labor and the public workforce system to grants. And why I mean that does that matter is because jobs have to occur. And so we don't train and pray. There's so many training programs that exist that people may go to with the expectation, oh, everyone needs welders, everyone needs electricians or HVAC, but the training program doesn't have employers. So we don't train anyone unless the employer is hiring them, right? And that's why, again, those reimbursements are critical because those apprentices are going to train maybe for 2 or 3 weeks before they go out to the field, right? And we also take our selection process really seriously as we look at people and do it in a way that's different than everyone else. We they do assessments for their work habits, looking at their level of conscientiousness, perseverance, attitudes towards theft, integrity. Why is that important? Well, attitudes towards theft will tell you a lot about a person and whether or not they're going to hide out on a construction site, because stealing time is stealing, period.
Right.
And so you want to look at these numbers as a way to effectively screen people. Our interviews have been built on, a lot of expertise, not just in HR, but for example, my time in military intelligence and human intelligence is making sure that we're asking people information that's actually of value, the answers. How often do we ask everybody the same type of questions? They give us the same kind of answers, and it doesn't distinguish one person versus another. So we measure that, we track it, and then we change our questions. And then in some prior to COVID, we even took them to either the American Ninja Training Center or CrossFit gym. And we tell them, look, this is not an evaluation about your physical fitness. This is about your attitude and personality. And they do roughly a 30 or 40-minute warm up, push-ups, pull-ups, running. We make accommodations for disabilities. You'd be surprised what percentage of our apprentices have disabilities. But what we're able to do is identify how do people operate under stress, right? I mean, we thought we conducted interviews well until we started doing that. And we realized, wait a second, when they have this team building event, which is where we're now starting to really identify the right characteristics, this person's just like on edge, and he's not giving everyone else an opportunity to lead when it's their turn to lead. We don't care. And we make it clear to them that they're successful in the obstacle. It's just how do they work together? But ultimately, you'll find that people will disappear 6 times to the bathroom and evade anything because they don't want conflict. They don't want whatever it may be. Some people don't even call us back afterwards, right? So it's not an employment tool. It's really looking for how do we give the people with the biggest barriers opportunities? Because the most satisfying part of this job is out of the 800 people that we put to work, about 250 of them were veterans that were either homeless or at risk of homeless. And these are Vietnam veterans who are sitting under the bridge that we definitely need to serve as well and take care of. These are often young men and women who just got out of the military last year and they ran through their savings and now they're sleeping in their car, and they would tell you that they're not homeless. Right? I was like, sorry, you meet the federal definition, so let us help you, right? But because those individuals are humble, hungry, and smart, they're so driven, they always rise to the top. Or another thing that we've done, and that we're definitely going to expand this year, is our work with men and women who've aged out of the foster system. Not everyone's going to be a good fit. They also, hey, do you have reliable transportation? There's other things that have to be identified and addressed. But when those boxes that we absolutely have to have checked are checked, for us to be a pathway into a $15, $16 an hour job starting, sometimes $18 an hour, depending on the role, to all of a sudden they're earning, $25, $30 an hour after they finish the apprenticeship, and they have an education that they didn't pay one dime for. They received mentorship from people that they earned trust and respect from. right? And almost, I would say, that employer becomes almost a parent in some ways, in the positive ways, to that
Right.
individual that otherwise has a high risk of becoming homeless or having, becoming pregnant before they're 21, and other things that may even land them into the prison system. Here's a viable solution, and all that has to happen is they absolutely have to have is a drive to work. And and that's what our team, we have 24 people at ACS, a third of them are out there just trying to find people who are driven. And then we're there to help find the right employer, put them with them, train them, make sure it makes financial sense to everybody. And because of support from all of our workforce partners and the local workforce system, our services are at no expense to an employer. Everything that we do is now funded by the public workforce system, but in the end, the metrics have been off the chart. So,
Well, I will say this as you get ready to close up, and I'll get your contact. I'll let you share your contact information in a second. But first and foremost, those 250 plus all the other, what is it, 550 that aren't included in that number because they weren't on the barrier of being homeless. At the end of the day, they needed help, and you found it for them. And so thank you for that. Thank you for your commitment to that. And we brushed over it earlier, but you returned home from as a wounded veteran, and so thank you for serving our country. I think it's really important to identify that. You're living testament to the men and women who we're defining right now, and so it's really powerful to see you living out your calling and then paying it forward to others. And so I think that's really just inspiring, and it's been a great time having you on the show today. Hopefully, it'll inspire others to take action again. So, business owners, operators, veterans, if it makes sense, if they're just curious and they're scratching their head and they just want to know more, and then see how they can be of value, maybe through donations, work, partnering, any of those things. What's the best way to get a hold of you guys? Is it to contact you directly or contact somebody in your office? What's the best way to work with you?
reach out to myself, Nicholas at acstexas.com. And there's a lot of different ways to help. The biggest thing is just trying to find jobs for us to fill. And we appreciate any financial support and donations, but honestly, we like to see those charitable donations to go to some organizations that are doing some amazing work, and they're short of funds like the Covenant House and other local community organizations that aren't just serving veterans, but are vulnerable youth or individuals that may have been trafficked. I will, if I can say one more thing, is as a veteran, I always try to make a point of thanking the Vietnam veteran era generation of veterans, because they've done so much to make sure that when we came home and as veterans transition or service members transition, that we had a better shake of it than they did, and that we continue to owe them a serious debt of gratitude.
Fantastic. And you can tell you're a humble man, and we're humbled to know you. And so, for our audience, as always, here at the Gulf Coast Growth Show, we're so thankful to be part of a community and an environment that's about service, giving, caring, and paying it forward. We've had countless guests come on the show, and the one thing that always rings true, whether it be a natural disaster like Harvey, when we have to be Houston strong, we never really are Houston weak, Gulf Coast week. We're always kind of in alignment and working and rowing in the same direction. And so it's great to have organizations like ABC, great CMEF, Economic Alliance, all of these people that partner with people like Nick and Adaptive Construction Solutions to find answers and find ways to create jobs, opportunity, and growth for those. And anytime you can make an impact in the veteran community, it's just a blessing. So thank you for tuning in. You reach out to Nick if you have any questions. As always, you can follow us in our show, the Gulf Coast Growth Show. We're on all major channels. You can find us on, just go on your little podcast icon there on your phone. Follow us on YouTube. You can click follow when you look us up on YouTube, or you can go to the Economic Alliance Houston Port Region webpage. There's a link down there. If you look at the website, you'll be able to track down a link, find information that you can actually subscribe to all of it at one time, and stay up to speed on what we're doing and the great work that's happening in the Gulf Coast. So thanks again, and we'll see you guys next week.